Before the darkness claimed me, there was a moment. Brief, fragile, where something refused to die. Not power, not ambition. Survival. A vision of my childhood alleyways choked with dust and blood. The Majelka slums. And in the midst of it all, Sarek. Legendary swordsman doing his best to keep the evil at bay. To hold a sense of order in a world of chaos. I was born in the shadow of Majelka's golden spires. Not within them, but beneath them. In the slums, where sunlight reached the ground only after it had been broken and bent by stone. Each dawn before the city woke, my father, a fisherman, would lead me beyond the gates to the quiet waters of the oasis. He taught me patience before he taught me strength. How to read the pull of the current. How to cast a net not to kill, but to claim space. To decide where a thing could move and where it could not. But day by day our poverty deepened and our depth ever growing. One day when the fishing nets came back empty, thugs came in their place. My father paid the price of unresolved debts. By burying him with my own hands, I paid with a piece of my soul. Years later, when I took up the blades, I told myself I had left Majelka behind. But the slums never leave you. I became what the city had made of me. A knife in the dark, a shadow between breaths, a blade dancer. Fast, silent, disposable. And yet, something felt incomplete. I had mastered the art of movement, but not of presence. I struck once, vanished, struck again. But my enemies endured. But when the time was right, I stumbled upon the blade I'd set out to find. The black sword of chaos. Its edge was sharp, its hilt relentless. It whispered of perfecting the forbidden technique. Lethal mirage. A way to strike from absence. To repeat an attack until reality itself faltered. I took it, and the world fractured. I was there, and not. Steel flashed where I had been moments ago. And with each mirage, something else followed. A surgical power of electrocutions. A shock unable to withstand. I called upon the thunderous power imbuing the mirages with lightning and learned the arts of throwing explosive charged traps alongside it. The enemies fell between my surgical explosions, from the sparking blades appearing out of thin air. My enemies were no match, but as I journeyed deeper, the monsters grew stronger. The lightning flashed beautifully, yet left no scars. So I changed my path, returned to steel and blood. I reforged lethal mirage into something heavier, physical, deliberate, unforgiving. No spectacle. Just steel melting flesh, again and again. And with it, I abandoned the chaos of traps. Instead, I embraced Shadow Cascade. Each time I vanished with shift, my absence struck back. Shadows followed my footsteps, carving through enemies where I had been moments before. Every movement became an attack. Every repositioning, another chance to bury blades deep beneath the skin. Enemies fell faster now, not because I overwhelmed them, but because I outmaneuvered them. But it wasn't enough. Now here's a quick reminder that you should click the subscribe button below the video if you haven't already. I got a lot of similar videos coming up and this is the perfect way to make sure you don't miss any, while also supporting me as a creator. Thank you. The deeper I pushed, the more the cracks revealed themselves. Foes grew thicker skinned, their blows heavier, and while my blades carved relentlessly, the battlefield began to close in around me. I was striking often, but not often enough. The mirages demanded more hits than I could give, and when the blades couldn't fall, neither did my enemies. I was outnumbered, overpowered. For the first time, I fell. Before the darkness claimed me, there was a moment. Brief, fragile, where something refused to die. Not power, not ambition. Survival. A vision of my childhood alleyways choked with dust and blood. The Majelka slums. And in the midst of it all, Sarek. Legendary swordsman doing his best to keep the evil at bay. To hold a sense of order in a world of chaos. He showed me the arts of daggers summoned by shadows, inflicting deep wounds that any blade of steel could. A wound that lingered. A mark left behind. Shadow daggers. At first they felt like a blessing, invisible blades buried beneath the skin, waiting to strike again. I forged rings from penumbra itself, legendary artifacts that promised to carve daggers from every mirage I left behind. I bent traps, synchronized shadows, twisted techniques meant to fight wars into tools for assassination. I defeated the Harbinger of Ash, unlocked paths thought closed forever. I honed puncture into a ritual of bleeding, every wound feeding the next, every cut sharpening my focus, and turned reshaping lethal mirage into something much more deadly in the process. My critical strikes grew heavier, more certain. At 100 corruption, I felt untouchable. Even emperors crumbled by my blade, but deep down, I knew this was still fragile. As corruption thickened, enemies didn't fall, they pressed closer. My blade struck true, but not often enough. Shadow daggers demanded repetition, but I was at capacity. I tried everything, different rhythms, different shadows, different lies. I circled old ideas, hoping familiarity would save me. At the edge of another failed echo, surrounded and bleeding, I fell. And for the first time since Majelka, I felt the same helplessness I had felt beside my father's grave. I vanished, not in speed, but in spirit. I wandered coastlines where ships no longer sailed, ruined harbors where broken nets still clung to rusted hooks, forgotten docks where the sea whispered to those willing to listen. Days bled into weeks, weeks into years. Each passing year stripped a piece away, until my own reflection felt like a stranger. I watched from afar as the void crept closer, not as a hero, not as a blade, but as someone who had failed to stop it. But then I remembered, a voice from another journey. Captain Harton, standing at the helm as the waves shattered in a journey to Lagon's Isle. He had spoken of Sorethka, a fisherman once feared even by armies, of a power woven not to capture prey, but to capture destiny. They had stood against the void not with blades, but with restraint, with ancient nets so powerful they could immobilize the strongest of foes. Their bloodline now broken, their ancient power sealed, only to be wielded by their last true heir. So I went to the shoreline where their old ship still rested, abandoned, waiting. And on the deck I found the truth. Ancient nets etched with runes of binding, hooks attached to strike alongside, plunging shadow daggers into the prey. I was their last descendant, and suddenly all of the pieces came together. My father had not taught me nets to catch fish. He had taught me control, discipline, patience, to master what would eventually become my destiny. If the void outnumbered me, I would contain them and take them out one by one. So we trained. My forefather showed me how to throw multiple traps in a single motion, how to attach hooks inflicting my foes with puncturing blows and shadow daggers, how to make even the strongest foe unable to dodge or avoid critical hits, how to exploit my paralyzed enemies, giving me more damage and faster throws. We etched smoke bombs into the traps, blinding enemies and imbuing myself with power greater than destiny itself. Shadows multiplying each hit, smoke blades engraving shadow daggers with piercing impact, Crimson Shroud inflicting bleed with the certainty of critical strikes. And together we carved greater power into my artifacts. More life, more pain, more fear. The black sword of chaos sang. Shadow daggers bloomed like storms after silence. Mirages struck no longer alone, but in harmony. The echoes of every failed strike, every abandoned path, every forgotten lesson, finally aligned. In the next battle, I rose in harmony with my own self. Crowds broke, bosses melted, the battlefield shook. Not from chaos, but from precision finally unleashed. Every movement had purpose, every strike carried memory. I was no longer reacting to the world, I was rewriting it. The slums no longer defined me. I was no longer the knife that fled after one cut. And as echoes collapsed behind me, I realized something quietly, completely. The girl from Majelka had never been lost. She had only learned how to survive long enough to matter. I am now at 1064 corruption, having fulfilled my destiny. But I want to pass the torch. Are you the chosen one? If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe to my newsletter in the video description where you get exclusive content, videos, stories, and giveaways. And if you want to see the full guide for this build, click on the video card on the screen. And I want to give a shout out to our new member, Jeremy. We're so happy to have you on board in the inner circle as a knight. And if you want to become a member to get exclusive perks such as early access to my videos, click the join button below the video. And remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons.